ain't going back. Not gonna buy into all that. Hey, hey, ain't gonna hide. Gonna let all the fears slide. Got mother nature is on my side. Got all of the loving growing inside.
Hello, everyone. Welcome once again to the New Now. I'm here with Joel Schaefer. I want to remind everyone we've been in publication with the newagora.ca for 11, 12 years. We did a monthly newspaper on the West Coast where Joel is. We are now fully online. We share all kinds of lovely information dedicated to freedom, governing yourself, power, and all of the lovely ways that you can help yourself grow into your own wonders should you decide to put those into action. Today, I'm here, as mentioned, with Joel Schaefer from Perceiver Channel, and we're going to discuss something which is probably close to his heart, given the name of his channel, perception and the war on. Hello, Joel. How's it going?
Hello. Good. Really well. How are you doing?
Good. So perhaps since this is the first time you and I are chatting, you could give our viewers a little bit of background about yourself and your channel and why you've called it Perceiver.
Yeah, totally. Thank you. Yeah, I've studied with shamans since I was like 13 and I kind of kept jumping from teacher to teacher to kind of recover from the previous teacher because I had some pretty intense challenges that came up and really cool stuff, really powerful journeys. But, the minute I took power plants at a young age, I knew that there was more to this world than meets the eye. And I just became super curious and fascinated with all that I could learn, and I really dove into the Carlos Castaneda material as my main subject to really focus on, and I was kind of looking for other people to help me understand it better and better, and so it took me on a long journey, and I just kind of been sharing some stories from my past on my channel and talk about a lot of Toltec principles, concepts, and things of that nature. So it's pretty much the reason why.
Well, that is what attracted me, to your channel in the first place and for us to chat, because, I've also dove deep, let's say, into the Castaneda works and put my own dreaming actions into play. And let's begin then with how would you describe perception?
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I would say in a sense, that's all that there is. Everything is perception. We experience the world as if, perception is like a subject, but really the fact that we have a description in which we interact, like that we experience a physical body and we perceive physical objects, that we're inside of a construct of perception that is upheld by maybe forces that we don't understand yet. But shamans seek to unlock the nature of perception by reaching deeper and deeper layers of silence to where they discover that things are not exactly what they seem to be. And so, yeah, perception is, our relationship with the description of feelings, right? So Don Juan said that everything's actually a feeling. We are a feeling. Everything we're observing is a feeling, but we've made a convenience of perceiving it in a particular ways to make that interaction with those feelings more functional.
Yeah, isn't that interesting that if you consider being energy first and physical second, and how that can allow the manipulation of our perceptions, right? The manipulation of our very reality, which could tie very well into what's going on these days. And, my feeling is when they've talked about their crazy reset, they just mean an assemblage point movement or a perspective or a perception movement of what we're looking at, what's important and what's not, and what's potentially real and what's not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's everything's synchronized. So what we may seem like we're in a situation that we have to fix, and we do. I mean, there's a predicament at place, but it's for a reason. There's a purpose, and so everything can sort of be decoded in that respect. And so when they talk about resets and things of this nature, we are in a new period of time. We're moving into a shift of perception, and maybe there are people that are trying to control that and make sure that it goes in a particular direction, but ultimately everyone that studies these things is aware that there's some unavoidable change coming, and those, I think, that try to resist that and control it and stop that will be fighting, wasting their energy, and those that learn how to acquiesce to it and adjust and sort of take the opportunity of each situation and make it as empowering as possible, will allow us to really navigate these transitions in a harmonious way.
What do you mean by unavoidable change?
Well, like, that as the veil lifts, you can either try to add more shields and avoid learning, or you can accept that your shields are coming off, but either way, it's going to force you to either try to pretend that you're asleep and even more than before, or you're going to have to come to terms with fully waking up. And so we're kind of in a slumber as a people. We are under some various forms of hypnosis. Even some of the most powerful Toltec shamans that I've met have areas of unconsciousness, areas of undealt with emotion, areas where they don't want to face and look at, and it's hard to point that out to somebody who thinks that they're further along than they are, and so we all just have lessons that are constantly coming. This just seems to be a time in which such a massive shift is upon us that there's just an opportunity to really go inward and learn about ourselves more, so that we can understand where the fear is coming from others, and where the courage is coming from others as well, because we can either respond with courage, or we can go into state of fear and contract. And so contraction and expansion is a key thing to be able to do at the appropriate times, but ultimately to acquiesce to these changes is going to be a lot more enjoyable than to resist.
What changes do you mean? Like what are we acquiescing to, in your opinion?
Remembering what we are, reclaiming our rights as sovereign, aware creatures, becoming back to the magic. We're really magical creatures that have been reduced to something pretty ridiculous in the way that we've been trained or convinced by the programming, whether it's schooling or just the description of the world that our parents believed in and then passed on to us. It's so kind of ridiculous in comparison to how incredible everything is and everyone is. And if you scratch the surface of anyone, there's a shaman beneath we're all energetically aware creatures. It's just that some of us have taken on so much programming that we're literally have become Agent Smiths of the Matrix, in a sense, that they're people that are fully defending the programming because it makes them feel comfortable.
I would agree. I've seen too many, let's say, other presenters talking about NPCs, non-playing characters, and I don't feel anyone really is an NPC. I'm more along the lines of what you've suggested, is just more deep into their programming, so it appears that they're fully asleep, yet they are, or they have the potential to be shamans, to be energetic beings. We're talking about, let's say, a war on perception or manipulation of. Where would you say some of these fears are coming from?
Yeah, I mean, shamans discovered that there's a force here amongst us that is on top of the food chain, that it has figured out how to make sure that we don't discover how incredible we are, so that it can keep us in a position in which it can harvest the luminosity that we create, because we are extensions of the sun, essentially, that we're part of this luminous, our eyes have light that comes out of them.
Mm.
And some people's have a lot of light, and some people is very dim.
Mm.
But the people that the masses are usually, for the most part, they don't have that extra intensity, because there are forces that are feeding off them unbeknownst to them. And it's a very disturbing thing to discover. But it's also when you do discover this, it makes sense the way the world is, once you realize that there's, this element of archonic forces that have figured out how to make sure that we behave a certain way, so that we can sorry, I got a phone call there. So that we can it's like there are multiple worlds, multiple dimensions, but we've been sort of isolated to this one, because if we were to discover how to travel into these other layers, then we wouldn't be easy to control and therefore consume. And so the fear that we experience is actually not natural. It's this predator that Toltecs have observed. It isn't just a typical predator. It lent us its mind. The program is so powerful that we have thoughts that aren't natural. So we have like two minds. We have our natural mind, which we were born with, but then around the age 3 or 4, we start to take on the program, which is, so when our internal dialogue, there's a lot of messaging that we think is just us talking to ourselves, but it's actually the program running. And so shamans learn to get really silent as a means to become aware of the difference between the program and then their natural thoughts. And the natural thoughts are more beautiful and harmonious, and it's based on the inner seer, the perceiver, that is, the guide of, the basically the our inner compass, our intuition. So that's just sort of the trick, I think, is to learning how to acquiesce to silence and learn how to hang out in that place where you're not having so many thoughts, but you're more hanging out inside the feeling realm. And if you can learn to do that, you can learn about lucid dreaming and learning about, all the gates of power and all these different ways in which one could experience the energetic side of things.
So I guess you could say that the challenges of the day are there to help us, to, the force of awareness, the force of pressure, the force of fears that you can follow along with or not, given that we all have, I would say, the will, free or otherwise, to choose our perceptions.
Yes. And there's so much freedom in that. And yet it's so uncomfortable to face. So people, we're in a real bind here where, it's the unknown is quite terrifying, but it's so liberating, right? And so it's just a matter of us taking, the steps toward freedom, regardless of being afraid, because we're gonna die anyways. We might as well, get to the point where we kind of, like, shamans use death as an advisor. They bring in the concept of death and they say the difference between us and others is that we are aware we're going to die, because we, those of us that are under the program, behave as if we're not going to die. We don't think of being mortal. We behave as if we're immortal. But if we were to really bring death in, and really acknowledge and sort of have those end of life conversations now, rather than wait, and really get to our feelings, then that really gives us more desire to live just a much fuller life. And Toltecs have discovered there's some disciplines one can do that would allow them to have an alternative form of dying, a much more harmonious way of dying. And so they strive to adjust their lives accordingly, and that becomes a priority, and then it brings a lot of purpose. And so there's less hesitation, or what is, when we're like, well, what is the meaning of life, or what is my purpose here, and I thought it was to be with this person, and then that person left me, now what's my purpose? And but if we each had our own really strong, powerful purpose, then life gets way more intense, and then time, being measured by intensity, time starts to expand. You start to have a much longer life, when a day for you feels like a month compared to somebody who's just going day to day, and they kind of hate their life, and they're just doing the same shit just to get by. Then it's a different time scale, and we want to get to that more expansive timelessness where things are guided, and we're feeling very alive and spontaneous, and not so caught in all the patternings that make us really habitual and obvious.
What would you say then, as a perceiver, that the biggest challenge people face is the fears of themselves, and how I would say how I've been horrible. I've had to face all my nastiness, my horrible choices, my not such nice actions in my life, being the perceiver, because I was causing my own distortions.
Totally. Yeah. We create our own reality, and it is uncomfortable and difficult to go and face and take responsibility. Because if we're victims, and we're blaming the government or the elite or these archonic forces for our life being not the way we want, then we're just handing our power over to something rather than taking that responsibility for it. And when you recapitulate your memories, you start to see your habits and your patterns, and how just the way we talk to ourselves, the way we treat ourselves, and then therefore how we talk and treat others is a reflection of our own inner state of harmony or lack of. And it is uncomfortable to look at and observe, but it's so worth doing, and it's so capable of, when you admit to yourself where you're at. Because a lot of people are like, well, I'm not far enough along yet, and they don't give themselves credit for all the work they've done. And other people think they're so much further along than they are, but they never really find that zone where they actually are. And so they're spinning their wheels their whole life, going, well, why hasn't this happened yet? Or I'll never be good enough. And so victim or victor. And we want to learn how to be in the neutral zone, so that we can really, kind of receive the jolt that comes from really just acquiescing to the lesson plan that's in place, rather than trying to control it, or trying to manifest something based on somebody else's version of a dream. Like, to get to our true dream is to really get out of the way, and there's a guidance system that knows exactly what you're here for, and how to give that to you. But we rather than acquiesce to that simplicity, we bring in a lot of complexity because of our programming.
Let's talk about recapitulation then, since you brought up the topic. Maybe you could describe that a little bit as you see it for, this conversation today. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a magical act. It's a really powerful way of reclaiming your power. But shamans take it very seriously, and some of them, old school, you would write a list of every person you've ever met in your life, which sounds impossible. But once you start writing the list, it starts to get, it's like, oh, wow. It doesn't have to be every name. It could be like the redhead that crossed the hall that day, and it's just enough that you are able to retrieve the scene. But we don't really do it old school anymore. We'll pick like just our sexual partners and just recapitulate scenes with exes or current partners, and then maybe jump over to like family, just mom and dad and aunts and uncles, and just pick sections and quadrants, and come up with as many scenes as possible. But ultimately, you pick one scene at a time, and you try to visualize what it, like what it would be like to be totally back in that memory. And all you're doing is you're breathing in the filaments of light that you left in that scene. You're breathing it back in, and then when you breathe out, you're releasing anything you took on that wasn't yours. So it's just sort of cleaning up the exchange. And so some people do a sweeping breath where they start on one side and they breathe in all the way across their body. And so they're in the scene, they're tracking it from one side of the room to the other. And then they breathe out, they're doing the same. And so you get used to this sweeping, and you can feel it, like the center of your body is doing it with you, because we have these luminous fibers that extend from the center of our energetic luminous cocoon. And so it's an art that takes getting used to. You could do pretty generic version of recapitulating, or when you learn really deep levels of silence, you can really do deep levels of recapitulation. And it makes you lighter. You're lighting up your being, because you're releasing filaments that are not yours to carry, and you're reclaiming the energy that would make you buoyant. And so shamans do it in order to do dreaming. If you recapitulate a lot, then you become lighter, and it's much more easier for your astral body to do all kinds of things, that are fun and liberating. And so it's tied to dreaming. Taisha Abelard wrote a book called The Sorcerer's Crossing, and she explains really well kind of the traditional recapitulation. And it's a great way to really understand, how powerful it is. But I've adjusted it. I do it very not traditional. When a scene comes up, I'll just take a moment and work with it, because I've been doing enough of it now where like all these memories from my past that I'd forgotten all about are just surfacing all the time. And so that's the benefit, is like people are like, how could I recapitulate every memory of my life? Well, it starts to take on it becomes a force of its own, and these memories just start to show up and more and more. And your cells want to be clean. And every memory everything that's ever happened is stored in our cells. We are like a tape recorder. We are a video recorder. We record it, and it gets confused, or our memories get mixed up based on our own expectations or projections or how we interpreted it. But as you get better and better at the recapitulation, those interpretations go away, and the memory itself will surface. And so some people go directly to the cells and just visualize the cells being purified. And I think if you're able to get silent enough, I think that's a very effective and very expeditious way of doing this work. But ultimately, the recapitulation is going to be something we do kind of over and over throughout our life, because we're going to get better and better at it. When you're really, really doing it, it feels like you're puking up your past. You can feel like acidic memory coming out in the out breath, because we are acidic. There's a lot of things that we do that keep us unhealthy, not just in the food we eat, but sometimes the energy that we take on, or other people's emotions or expressions or projections of how they perceive us. And then because when it's coming off of you, you're getting really liberated. And so there's all kinds of sort of psychic healing that one can do on themselves once have gone into their cave and have sort of discovered these deeper layers of it's like soul retrieval for yourself, where a medicine person could help you with that, but eventually you can do your own.
That makes sense. I mean, I know I've worked in a Japanese translation of that very book with a lady here in Japan.
Oh, cool.
Well, my wife is Japanese, so I contacted the publisher to ask them about a Japanese version, and eventually I got in contact with a lady that was doing the translation. And so she had me check her English from the translation of the and Being and Dreaming. She did both books here in Japan.
Oh.
The other one, yeah. So I'm very familiar with those books, and having seen like now that we're talking about, I guess, these ladies' books, perhaps we can delve a little bit into how important it is for women to claim that power that's beyond their reproduction, their dreaming organs, their womb, beyond making babies, and what that can mean for humanity as a whole.
Totally, yes. Very important subject. It's our organs have a secondary function, and those are magical functions. And the most important organ, as far as the magic goes, is the womb, and it's what shamans call the dreaming box. And women are much more liberated in the energetic world than men. Men have some advantages in the physical world, and women have some advantages in the dreaming world. And women, when they if and when they reclaim their role as as guides in this system, like women's intuition is so powerful, and it comes from the fact that women at one point in time determined our evolution. The womb is not just for reproducing children, but for producing realities, for dreaming forward the direction of humanity. And if women can be cared for by the masculine, if the masculine can be in a strong container, and then the wild power of the female can be given this structure and support to then really become alive and guide, then really beautiful things can happen, whether it's in a couple or in an entire kingdom. But it's just a matter of us returning to to working together. My elder used to say there's only two tribes, the tribe of man and the tribe of woman, and they're very different. But if they could learn to build a bridge and work together, then we could change the situation we're in. We could reclaim our power from these forces and re-intend the direction of our lives again, rather than something intending it for us.
I think it's very powerful, the idea of recapitulation as a cleansing tool for the dreaming organ. As you mentioned, something that gets polluted or is encouraged to be polluted from the tribe of women, so to speak, these days, sexual liberation and all that sort of nonsense that doesn't allow for what you mentioned to come to an intelligent fruition.
Yeah, I mean, really powerful Toltec women recapitulate so completely that even though they were not virgins, they reclaim their organ and are now virgins again, because they took their energy back from all of their sexual acts. Even having had children, they can completely heal and revitalize their organ as if nothing ever came out. I mean, it's pretty incredible how powerful this energetic side of healing can be. And women being unaware that they're bonding with men for 7 years every time they sleep with them. There's an energetic exchange that makes sure that we, are bonded. And it's a positive thing, in a sense, that's such a powerful thing to do with someone, that that this energetic bond would happen. But when we're unconscious of it, then it can create some massive confusion and energetic dependencies, and it just explains the entrapping nature of relationships and the codependent dynamics that occur. And so learning about how powerful of an because sex is an exchange of power. There's no way around it. You're exchanging power every time you have a sexual act. And so we can mature and grow up and take responsibility for all that, and clean up our past through the recapitulation, and we can have really powerful partners in which we become aware of that power exchange, and we don't treat it as something mundane, but really hold space for it to be, just a really magical tool, not only for romance, but for dreaming. People can use sexual energy and dreaming energy are one and the same. And so when you build sexual energy up, especially with another, you don't have to then just explore the physical act. You can go into the energetic side of that affection and really just totally explore those feelings. And if both parties are capable of lucid dreaming, you can sort of, there seems to be there's a beautiful transition from lovemaking into dreaming, back into lovemaking, back into dreaming, once you sort of unlock the mysteries of that stuff. It's really powerful.
For sure. I would feel that it is perhaps the next level of action potential for the tribe of man and the tribe of women. That if men picked up their role as, well, maybe impregnators of dreams instead of impregnators of their sexual desires, right? And then the women gave birth to those dreams, then both have a responsibility of potentially building this new world or this new way of being that many of us can intuit but haven't been able to put into words.
Absolutely. Yeah, what an incredible assignment, and we're just so fortunate to be aware of these things, and hopefully more and more of us make use of these concepts. And that's what shamans have said, that eventually there'll come a time where these concepts will be needed, like absolutely needed, because we'll reach a point where the world will start to collapse on itself without these things. Yeah, sure.
Maybe even soon, or so it seems anyways.
Right.
Well, what would you say then as a means of a starting point, let's say for ladies? Like it's interesting how this conversation has turned towards this. I wasn't expecting it, but it seems to be the topic of topics, as they say. Besides, how would, let's say, a lady that's lost in her life, and I've come across a few of them that aren't properly directed, want change and aren't sure which way to go, get lost in the miasma of the thoughts, and yet their wombs are confusing them as to what it's asking for as new dreams. Do you have any suggestions?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds counterintuitive, but we want to come out of the shame and guilt. And so we actually want to really get really honest about and tap into our sexual desire, and so that we can understand truly where it's coming from. And so the sexual shadow healing work is really powerful, the tantra side of things for women, learning how to activate your power and not have it be about a man or even a partner, being able to just learn how to love yourself. And I don't mean just sexually, but like it's there is so much support that the Earth Mother is offering, but it's hard for us to receive that love because we don't love ourselves. And so to accept this type of guidance. So, there's these really cool shamanic movements that really help men and women to really feel their feelings and access resources that typically aren't accessed, and they bring in a boost of energy. And so they're not hard to do. They're confronting because we sense that they're powerful. But it's a first step as far as starting to reclaim your energy, is to do these movements. And then they activate and awaken dormant aspects of our being, and that allows for our energy gates or our chakras to become healed. So getting support is key. Therapy may seem, a lot of people get disappointed with therapy and stuff and they give up, but if you can find somebody that can truly listen
Mm.
and telling your story, it's called witnessing. When if somebody is really listening and is not, is holding space to hear your story, then magical things happen.
Mm.
And things are revealed, and that's not that hard to do. Women like typically to talk and share, and they want their husbands to do the same, and they want, like a lot of, and if we can, rather than be on autopilot around that, bring in some consciousness to that sharing, and just unburden your story, as a means to, really be seen.
Mm.
And then, getting to the forest and getting your heart on the earth. For women, getting in with other women, like in the river naked, like go back to the earth and like really get the mud on your skin, and like really earth, is a huge key element to, like, because women are wild and beautiful and powerful, and so we don't want to end up back in some sort of like up. Just because this liberation movement is backfired doesn't mean we want to like restrict and go into like fear and Christianity, and like, we want women to be powerful
Mm-hmm.
and celebrate their power, but to become very conscious as well, so that they don't accidentally hand their power over to someone that's looking for it. So, yeah, just the real basic stuff at first. Getting out in the weather, getting rained on, just talking to the mother, beginning that process of forming a relationship, because she does have a voice, she does communicate. It's not like you and I do, but there's transmission that happens. A lot of people will just, if they don't have anyone in their life, they'll ask a tree, "Can I tell you my story?" And they'll even offer tobacco, and the tree will either say yes or no. Like, you'll feel it. You can go to the next tree and ask, but yeah, witnessing on any level and releasing the story is, I think, a really key beginning.
I would agree. I would agree fully. I mean, if people can figure out how to dream and how to let this next dream come, and maybe a key for men is not to try and fix the lady's problems, because they're not really looking for that when they're sharing with you. They're just looking for the witness and a reflection
Yeah.
thereupon, and then they can figure things out for themselves.
Yeah, and then they'll when you step into that role and they recognize the difference, then they can start to relax and open up, and then a lot more magic can happen in the relationship. And so, if it's sexual energy is intense, and we want to learn how to have a lot of it running through us without it becoming the focus, so that we can have affection all the time, rather than, sort of being caught in the patterns of where that goes. And it's just becoming more conscious, and makes a big difference.
So how would you say, as we're getting back to the topic of our conversation, the war on perception, they can alleviate the attacks that come on a daily basis for that perception, both men and women, away from this magical potential that we've chatted about, that's being pushed into, let's say, a box of nonsense, is how I'll put it.
Yeah, I mean, making peace with the fact that things are tricky, and giving ourselves time and space to go through these changes. Because if we beat ourselves up for, you know, how easily distracted we get, then we get caught in this shame and guilt cycle. And so it's shamans are jovial and light, and they celebrate life, and they laugh, and they make fun of themselves, and they make fun of each other, and we take ourselves pretty seriously, and it's hard for us to reach those really liberated states. But that's that's sort of, being able to laugh at our situation and our predicament, and learning about how we create our own reality, but without beating ourselves up for it. But ultimately, yeah, there's, when you have that extra energy and you feel that you want to make a change, anytime you forge a new neural pathway, the universe notices and lends you extra energy, because it's seeking to become more conscious of itself. And if you're becoming more conscious of yourself, then you in turn are sharing that with the entirety of the system. And so it becomes really obvious the things that bring energy and things that drain us. And we got to learn about that. And, there's going to be times where we get really drained and realize, man, this just doesn't, I can't do this anymore. And we finally get sick enough of certain ways of living. And we just recognize, wow, I'd rather, rather than like, because discipline and impeccability are very different. Discipline is like repressing sometimes, and it's like controlled. And there's a place for discipline. I'm not saying we shouldn't be disciplined, but eventually your discipline wants to turn into impeccable actions, to where you are not doing things out of the habit of the discipline, but you're truly listening in the moment, and you're doing things out of love and gratitude, rather than out of fear of what might happen if you don't. And there's this huge difference. But until we get to that impeccability, it's okay to use disciplines. They bring in the ability to focus. But falling in love with something, finding a path of heart. It could be a martial art, could be gardening, it could be just making jewelry, or whatever it is for you that you truly want to do. Even if doesn't mean you have to turn it into your career. It could be just something on the side that makes you feel more alive. And there's things from your childhood that are that you can go back and be like, wow, I used to feel so good when I used to do this. And it's okay just to go, open a coloring book and slow down and give yourself permission to just experience these feelings of just something, absorbing your attention to something. It can be life-changing. Carlos Castaneda, when he got his book started selling, he was becoming famous, Don Juan said, you need to go like flip burgers while people yell at you. Like, go do something that's really difficult and that you have to work really hard and fast, because your ego is going to start getting tricky if you don't have something of that nature. And so our bodies actually love having purpose and an opportunity to express or get good at something. Well, often people are avoiding jobs like the Matrix. They're afraid of a job, but it's actually the very thing that they need, because they're just hanging out trying to create a life that it's just, you're just going to kind of make yourself crazy unless you've got a task in which you can cultivate and develop your will. And for some people, it's the opposite. Some people are workaholics, and if they could just learn to stop, and learn how to just contemplate the universe and sit in their feelings, that would, so just depending on where each person is, there's magical solutions. It's just a matter of tracking kind of, what it is that is specifically the formula that is being shown for you. And so there's polarity work with shadow work, where you, like, if something really angers you about somebody, then it means that there's something within you that is unresolved. And so we want to get to know. So any interactions in the world is going to give us that biofeedback, whether it's road rage or getting pissed at watching the news or whatever it does. We want to know about ourselves and why we're triggered, and explore those triggers. And that's something that my wife and I do a lot. Is we mentor, we help people to get to know themselves better and serve as a mirror. And so people come to us for, whether it's in replacement of therapy or to learn about dreaming, or just to be able to unlock some of the mysteries of their their family or their lineage, and just to have an opportunity to find ways to sort of forgive themselves and forgive everyone, because it is a process to really let go and let God, so to speak, to really like acquiesce to this situation. And but you know, there's going to be times where we get out of sorts, and we, you know, fall into fears or have expectations, and that, you know, that create disharmonies. But that's how we get to, you know ourselves better. And it's usually not the end of the world, and usually there's a solution and a way to resolve things even when they're out of balance. For me, learning to ask for help is a hard thing.
Mm.
It took me, you know, like I suffered unnecessarily for a long time because I just didn't want to burden anyone.
Mm.
Right. And it's just the nature of my ego was like, oh, I can do it myself, kind of thing. And so we all have these little weird things that if we could just have somebody help us understand how much this one little aspect of our ego is hijacking the whole trajectory of our life. You know, what used to take me 2 years to work through now takes 2 months. And someday it'll only take 2 weeks. And then someday it'll just take 2 days and then 2 minutes. But in the initial stages, the ego wants to make changes fast. It's like, oh, I have to get this fixed. But it's like, you know, we need a strategy here. We're going to go slow, work through this stuff. It's going to take time. We can't just change our patterning instantly. It does take some stalking of yourself and getting to know where this desperation to get out of that pattern is. Because it's all just tricky stuff. The way the ego, once the ego is very powerful in that as long as we stay down, it knows how to control us. But when we start to come out of the victimhood, then it tries to figure out a way to hijack us in a new way. It's going to make us feel special. It's going to make you think, oh, look, you're special, you know, blah, 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 whatever little voice in our head that keeps us from, you know, being in that neutral, humble state in which we could truly be effective. And so that's how we get to know shamans, warriors, dreamers go through stages of getting really cocky and confident because they start to develop aspects of their being that most people don't even know about. And so they go through stages where they almost put themselves above. But ultimately, we're not above or below anyone or anything. We're all just interconnected, and we all are super fortunate to have the unique formula that we have.
No, I would agree. I think as you find your path as well, you meet others like you and I are chatting now. And, you know, I do similar work in listening to ladies. I've done it over the years, and I found, you know, I've done In Love Unlimited, which is about living, you know, in love unlimited. And mostly it's attracted, as you've mentioned before, people that just need someone to be a witness to their life, not try and fix things and allow them to recapitulate in a safe space for themselves,
So
beyond being judged. I mean, I can also see how I've been a fool my whole life. Even to this day, even to yesterday, like I'm always being silly or stupid to myself and for myself. And I realize that helps me, you know, when you're honest, get over that without saying, oh, you know, no, I'm great, or no, I'm fantastic. Instead of, well, just into the poo again. I better stand up, clean myself off, and keep moving.
totally. Yeah. It's how we learn is, you know, it's all through the trenches, you know, and you can learn so much from being around people at work or in different situations, and just really I borrow from different people's, you know, strengths and weaknesses. I just learned so much from like there's guys that just don't want to go home at the end of the day. They want to stay and work. They going home and it's like hard for them to relax, you know. They're just like just like they feel empowered when they're at their job and running shit and they know what to do. And it's vulnerable for them to go sit with their wife, or they just don't feel comfortable. And it's like, where I'm the opposite. I could just hang out with my wife all the time, and like work is like really like not something I want to do for the most part. And so, but I borrow from their power. And I'm like, you know what? That's awesome. I'm gonna wear that on
Mm.
when I really need to. And it's like I absorb that perception, and then I use it, and it's an incredible gift, and it gets me through difficult times when I need that extra boost. But looking into the nature of how people respond, to challenges, and how they evolve, and it just gives us key insight, and is always, whether depending on how it triggers us, it gives us insight into where we are and what the areas of unconsciousness that we have. And yeah, the more honest we get with ourselves, the more we start to interrelate and understand that every story is rich. Every person has a relationship with eternity, and everybody is, blocking that relationship with various ways. And everyone is capable of understanding these concepts. And if we can become more creative in how we deliver these things, then it doesn't have to be just a select few people that really get this stuff. We can form a bridge for all kinds of people to have access to these concepts. And so that's what I find is, even in the dense construction world, that there's always a window of opportunity for somebody to have a shift of perception. And if I am really listening, then I'll be able to be in place to sort of help or assist with that process without them realizing they just sort of stepped into the spiritual side of things without knowing it. So there's just so many different times when there's never anything that's mundane. Everything's rich and powerful, and people are larger than life, and they just have so many messages to give us based on the things they talk about or bring up in our presence. Always a messaging, signs and omens, and all these things are happening all the time.
I would agree. I think you've, in some ways, fully described the question at the beginning of our conversation. How you can notice the war on perception, battle the war on perception, and succeed with the war on perception by increasing your own perception, and then you don't get manipulated. So it was a beautiful way of, let's say, sharing a good solution I found just there. So thank you so much, for sharing that one, Joel. I appreciate that. Well, is there anything perhaps, maybe we've come to a natural conclusion on this little chat? Like, I saw a whole bunch of segues and deep sideways topics that we can take things and delve into properly, perhaps in future conversations, man-woman relationship, energetic truths, the archons, a few of them that I've jotted down here. And I would love to, to pick this up again at a future point when we're both comfortable with that. But is there anything you'd care to leave, well, both of our viewers with as we segue out, let's say?
Yeah, sure. I mean, just I agree. I think it's a good segue, it's good timing, good talk. Just learning to take things in to lighten up in any way possible, right? So I shake a lot. I recommend people, learning how to move stagnant energy in whatever way they can. Dancing in the dark alone, where so that you liberate yourself from like how people might think I look funny, but if you can come out of all those kind of like things, it's such a huge way to just sort of really get goofy and make fun of ourselves and lighten up the mood. And because the shamanic work can be kind of there's some forces and some heaviness to the concepts, and so shamans are very careful to make sure that they remain jovial and stuff as they approach these concepts. And so just keep it light and enjoy what time we have here. We don't know how long we get, and it's a the mother is very beautiful, and there's a lot of experiences to be had, and yeah, I encourage everybody to come out of any, you know, levels of fear that they feel comfortable to move past, and start to, you know, celebrate their life a little bit more, even when things are tough, because that jovial energy will bring there's a lot of support that may not be seen, and we just want to usher in that extra love when possible.
I would agree. Don't forget to laugh at yourself. I do it all the time. You know, funny dancing in public is great. You know, so it does bring a change in your perspective and your assemblage points. You know, we haven't really talked about that too much either, and can give you new ways to go through whatever challenges happen to be facing you at the time.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, Joel, thank you so much. I appreciate your time here. I will leave Joel's links below to his channel. I will leave links below to our channel. And if there's anything else you wish to share or anything you want me to link to, please send it along once we're off here. And I hope to see you again very soon.
Awesome. Yeah, so good to meet you, and look forward to next time.
Me too. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for being here. Please like and subscribe, share around. Go to Joel's channel and check it out. He's got a whole bunch of interesting videos there too. I've been looking around over the last little while, and we'll see you again on the next one. Bye-bye, everyone.
All right. Bye-bye.
Light up my heart. No one tells me where I should start. Freedom.